Very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Singapore Tourism Board's Marketing College Masterclass. As we all know, 2020 has been a year like no other, and we're very pleased to wrap the year with another masterclass that focuses on charting growth with consumer centricity. Nicholas, please.
Well, thank you very much. And it's great to be here. And of course, as you say, sometimes we just have to work around these technical issues as we all navigate the new normal. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased to see so many of you join online today. What I'm going to talk to you is about how to navigate this challenging period by applying customer centricity to everything you do. And right now, that is more important than it has ever been before. So I hope this webinar will prove useful, and I just want to give you the invitation to send as many questions as you want, and we will discuss those at the end, and there's also going to be a poll at the end. So I'm really looking forward to having your contribution and trying to answer any questions you have. In particular, if they relate to your business or your situation, I would really love to discuss those with you. So thanks a lot for joining and following along. So charting growth with consumer centricity. What does this mean? Well, first of all, here at the DTTT, we have learned to really love and champion service design as not only a skill set, but actually as a way of looking at the opportunities to build services and build the experience around the needs of our customers. A lot of companies will say, well, we are natively very, very passionate about things like design thinking. But here at the DTTT, it's something we've learned over a long period of time by applying it and by understanding what it means to be creative in how we look at every single situation. And the reason I want to share that with you is because I think this is something important to say, that to apply service design within your business, it's not a skill set that you need to already come with. It's something that you can shift your mindset and learn to adopt within your business on a day-to-day basis. Today, we work with more than 100 different design templates that we've done, and it's everything from how to be a glass box brand, that is how to really be who you say you are on the inside as well as the outside of your business. So promoting your values both as a marketing strand, but also as a core value central to your business, but also doing things like designing new experiences and collaborating with partners and looking around you at the neighborhood, at the different communities that you engage, and using design and your own creativity as a way to actually strengthen your offer and to work on that and develop that over time. So that's a little bit about what we do here at the Digital Tourism Think Tank, and we obviously do a lot more, and many of you will have seen me from the previous events, which I'm really glad that I can rejoin you, even if it's virtually. Well, we seek out a lot of inspiration to apply design as a day-to-day skill set within our team. And I wanted to share this with you first because it's something that actually anybody can do. We use tools like Mural, which allow us to collaborate in a very creative way remotely. So we do a lot of sticky note sessions, but online using that. We also have followed the IBM practitioner course, which allows us to put design at the center of the business. And again, this is about thinking through the mind and the eyes of your customer. It's about understanding their problems, working through how to solve their problems within your business concept. We also turn to things like Luma Institute, Stanford Design School, and IDEO, which are great platforms to solve those bigger issues. So I would really highly recommend you guys check out those resources because many of those are free of charge and will be very, very valuable as you work through some challenging times. And if you only have time for one, I would definitely say to check out the IBM Design Thinking Practitioner course. It's something that everybody can do, and it will help you really see the world through a different light when it comes to thinking about the needs of your customers. So if we think about design and we ask you, well, can you design or draw a vase? This is generally what people come up with, something that looks like a vase. It's very nice. These graphics here on the sticky notes are actually photocopies of sticky notes that our team did a year ago when we gave them this exact task. And of course, if you're asked to design a new experience or to create a service for your customers, you will invariably go with what you are familiar with. But what if we focus beyond the object, beyond the exact need, and we focus on the experience itself that we're trying to create? If we think about the experience, we can really see ourselves as designers in a completely different way. Here is what we might come up with if we ask about how to create the experience of enjoying flowers, we might come up with something that looks very different to a vase and looks much more multisensorial and something that is truly innovative, creative, and immersive. Here is an example of something that one of my colleagues, Laura, drew. She drew a wall full of flowers with a Roomba robot, which released scents of flowers. Well, of course, sometimes creativity brings crazy ideas, but this is just an example of how we can think outside the box. And this is such a well-known saying, but do we ever really ask how we push ourselves to think outside the box? So in a setting like a restaurant, everybody does very similar things. We go to a restaurant, we enjoy company, and we enjoy that meal in front of us. But actually, if we look beyond that and we think about the experience, we realize that it is not just about having lunch. It's about the emotion that we create. It's about creating something evocative, asking ourselves, how does that experience make someone feel? We've all been there where we've been on our own and we've had to eat, and we're sitting in a restaurant, and perhaps it's not the most enjoyable experience without the company of somebody else. Or we've had an amazing meal and we've been able to spend such an incredible time, perhaps because that experience created something special beyond just the food. So think about these things when you think about the experience that you create and how to create something which is really, really unique for your customers. And that's where I turn to IBM, which I referred to at the beginning, because IBM have created a design system that helps drive, it helps guide and align our thinking so we can focus on the needs of our users. Well, I don't have time to go into this in detail today, but I just want to talk about some of the key principles. They talk a lot about the loop at IBM, about the need to constantly iterate, to see it as an infinite loop of change. We can design an experience, but it will never be finished because we have to always adapt that. And I think if you're working on new products and new experiences right now, you surely know exactly what that means. It's about having a set of principles which align our thinking, and it's about the keys that align us. And that is to say, we build hills, certain obstacles for our customers that we challenge ourselves to overcome. And playbacks, which allow us to look at what's happening, look at how our customers are responding to our solutions, and sponsored users, where we work really closely with our customers to actually design solutions around their needs. And this is some of the principles that everybody can apply in their business on a day-to-day basis. And this is about shifting the mindset about how we do things. If we turn to tourism right now, I know just as much as you guys just how challenging this is. You may not believe it, but actually in our position, in a strategic position, we have been just as impacted. We lost everything since March, and we've been working tirelessly to try and rebuild everything. So we know exactly what it means to pivot, to make a shift to the left or a shift to the right. And it's about going the journey. And service design is all about involving everyone in the process of designing new solutions around users' needs. I want to start this section with this very famous quote: "A problem well stated is a problem half solved." If you think about this in everything you do, you'll start to realize that the problems we see in front of us are not really the root cause of those problems. We often have to dig deeper, and we do an exercise called the 5 whys, where we ask why 5 times to get to the root cause of a problem. This is some of the pre-pandemic problems we were looking at last year with different tourism boards. We saw people saying, well, it was difficult to collect and obtain data from different industry partners, or it was difficult to measure the success of the content strategy as it wasn't always very straightforward with so many different touch points. But actually, these were surface level. We had to get right to the bottom, and often the challenges in those problems came down to organizational problems or the way in which we approach the different services with our customers. So why is design thinking so important to identifying solutions? Well, in short, we can't design a solution just like that. We can only put out an idea and work with that idea and learn what's working and adapt over time. And this is exactly what we've been doing. This is a collaborative remote canvas using Mural that we did with around 100 different people. And it just goes to show the power of having a collective approach to things. What I want to say to you now is probably something that will be slightly shocking, but work with your competitors. Now is the time to bring your competitors on board and collaborate with them, because you probably will be surprised that if you enter a strategic process today with your competitors, you're going to come up with some amazing things which strengthen both of your businesses. Use digital to connect with people in this remote environment today, and see digital as an enabler. This is just some of the things we've been working on since the start of the pandemic, and some incredible solutions have come out of just collaborating and thinking about ideas. Here's how we start out designing 4 different experiences. We started out at the very top with around 100 different micro experience ideas, clustering them, working on them, iterating them, and adapting them. And that's how we come up with something brilliant. And it's only by putting it out there and testing it with our users that we really know how they're going to respond to that. Now, before the pandemic, we used to look at problems like seasonality, how to disperse visitors into lesser visited places, how to solve challenges like over-tourism. I don't think that's something anyone is complaining about today. And how to work on things like sustainability, which is absolutely on the forefront of customers' minds today, and we expect that to strengthen going forward. But right now, we have different challenges we have to focus on. There is an issue of trust and confidence. There are economic pressures as consumers don't know if their employment is safe or if their business is safe. And that pressure really is starting to mount on people. So we need to be conscious of that when we think about designing around the needs of our customers. There are also huge barriers when it comes to connectivity, flights, being able to welcome international visitors. And of course, the issue of safety and capacity and how we welcome the same number of visitors or retain the same level of revenue or profit is, of course, a continuing challenge where we need to think about how we design our business. When we think about challenges, we look out into the world about what we could do. And this is one of my favorites. It's probably something which has evolved a little bit since the start of the pandemic, but it's a restaurant called Board for N. And basically that is a restaurant which has created a table for one. And it's an outdoor table where the chef, a Michelin star chef, sends the food in a hamper from a distance down a sort of zip wire. Now, it's a little bit of an out there concept, but it's a concept which grabs your attention. It speaks to the customer that wants to be in a safe environment, but still enjoy a really unique experience. Here's another example of designing completely unique experiences in times of adversity. This is a restaurant in Amsterdam that decided to get a range of greenhouses, put them along the canal side, and allow people to enjoy the meal in the comfort of their family bubble within these greenhouses. It's very quirky, but it's about thinking about the spaces that you have and how you can design a new experience. And in fact, businesses like this have been able to put themselves on the map by thinking out of the box, not seeing the challenges they have today as problems, but opportunities. So how do you tackle these different problems? Well, start by thinking about what you can do. And if you think about that, ask yourself, what am I able to do right now? Ask yourself what you can't do right now, and start to work on what you're going to be able to do to create a completely new concept, focusing on your strengths, focusing on the core passion at the heart of your business. So this is where design meets tourism. We need to think about the visitor needs, community needs, digital needs, and leadership needs, and think about how we respond to that with things like empathy, things like collaboration, even with competitors. Revisiting the customer journey, something that I'm sure you've learned a lot about in previous masterclasses, and asking yourselves again, what is that customer journey looking like for our customers today? Where do they find barriers, and how can we work to overcome them? Now, I want to start with one of my favorite city case studies. In many ways, I see City as the inverse of Helsinki, apologies, as the inverse of Singapore. It's a very like-minded city, but it's a very, very different city at the same time. Now, they've been focusing on digital innovation for many years, and they recently released a concept called Welcome to the First City as a Service, playing on the tech term SaaS or software as a service. Now, as a city, they've played a lot with their brand, but they've worked a lot on responding to the needs of users. And they've done this in so many different ways over the last few years, and they've been applying design thinking to say, what do our customers need and how can we support them? One of the biggest initiatives was working with the Chinese market, a very valuable market for Helsinki because of the unique flight connections between Helsinki, Finland, and China. And they have been working tirelessly over the last 5 to 10 years to try and ensure that Chinese visitors to Helsinki can experience the city just as a local would. And this required them to apply design in understanding that. Today, when they talk about the city as a service, they're trying to attract inward investment, people to relocate and to move to Helsinki by seeing it as a city that serves its customers with a customer-centric first. This isn't about looking at residents, tourists, visitors, businesses. This is about looking at everybody as a customer. And another destination which does this really well is a place called Lax. It's a ski resort in Switzerland, and they've created a truly unified experience from end to end, where the arrival right through to skiing and the slopes, right through to retail dining and ordering food is all taking place in a really, really optimized digital visitor experience. There isn't a single detail that's been missed in this experience, right through to creating a gamification experience where you can compete with your friends on the slopes, recognizing that they need to provide a service function in an incredible way, but they also need to create experience at the same time. Going a little bit lower tech, we really love Ile de la Madeleine. It's exactly what we're talking about here, allowing competitors to work with each other and to co-create new solutions. Here we see a great example of people working together. They're all competitors, and they're looking at how to connect different local experiences between each other so they can pass visitors from one business to another, or from one museum or experience to another, and how they can involve and connect locals in the process. A great example that I really recommend everyone checks out. Ultimately, ask yourself, what is my true passion? And once you know what your true passion is, you'll know how to build an experience around that. Because it's all about the experience and the passion that you have and connecting those two things. And no matter what challenges you face, you're going to be able to find something new if you look into it in that way. Thinking outside the box is about looking at the opportunities to create something completely unique for your customers. It's about creating a hook that will be able to respond to the needs of your customers. It's about being sometimes very unconventional, bold, and transparent about who you are and why you're doing it. It's about making the booking really easy. And this is one of our favorite examples of a business case study called Unyoked. It's a business which has created these cabins all over Australia. And they've created these really uniquely placed cabins in the wilderness, in the nature, where you can just go into pure isolation and experience the nature around you. Every cabin is unique, and actually it's all managed by the same company. So you have a sort of consistency and a very high quality experience. And they focus on the short-term booker. They've seen the trend shift, and when you go onto their website, they show you what's available this weekend. They know that their customers may want to get away at the very last minute as people's behavior and booking patterns change. But they also want to be away from others and want to have a really unique experience in the nature. If we think about something that you might relate to in a busier city like Singapore, we think about how we repurpose the spaces that we have today. And we've seen so many great examples of this. And I'm going to talk about some of my favorite Singapore examples a little bit later on in the presentation. Swedish hotel Stat, they opened up their rooms as private dining spaces. They realized that that penthouse suite and the top floor made for an incredible private dining experience. And whilst the restaurant had a reduced capacity from its previous pre-pandemic state, they realized that the hotel was underoccupied. And this meant perhaps reimagining the restaurant concept, creating something that is more customer-centric and premium. And we've seen this over and over again. But it's not only about saying, well, how can we reuse a hotel room? It's also about how to reimagine the experience within a space. And we love the example of a hotel called Aura in Copenhagen, which is focused more on creating a design experience where every single thing in the hotel can be purchased. And it's more about the immersive experience of experiencing sound, music, design, and spaces all in one unified experience. And it's not about the rooms in isolation as a hotel. If we think about digital, this is the heart of our passion here at the DTTT. we know that we have to work really, really in detail at every little step of that customer journey. One of our favorites is a company called Up Norway. They're a luxury tour operator that is focused on personalization from end to end. At the very beginning, they use a logic-based form to ask you, what do you want to see? How do you want to experience Norway? What are you looking for? Tell us about yourself. They don't just start by throwing products in front of their customers. They start by asking their customers, what is it that we can create for you? They then build through a series of automations and also a manual creation. So it's not only about bots and technology, it's also about the human intervention. They build these incredible experiences that you can consider and book. And then when you make that booking, there's an automation process, which allows a very new kind of millennial traveler to have an off-the-shelf experience without necessarily that human contact that they're not necessarily looking for anymore, but still a very luxury and premium experience because of the strength of that experience. And then when you travel, you're supported continuously through a companion app, which allows you to chat to your host continuously and receive your step-by-step ideas, bookings, and recommendations on the go. And that's all using existing off-the-shelf technology. There's no rocket science there, and there's no hard coding in any big way. This is also another favorite example. It's a place called Dyreparken. It's a zoo and an attraction in Norway. And they've been working for 10 years on applying design principles at every single point in the business. And they've created beacons and sensors throughout the park to understand how people move from one place to another. They've started to recognize different patterns, such as if it rains, they recognize that people rush into the shops and they miss out on vital custom because they can't service them fast enough. And they had to create, as a result of looking at that customer data, additional sales points. Very simple things, reading from customer data. Today, they've completely leveraged that digital experience and that intelligence they have at every detail to create a truly contactless experience and to manage flows using data. So that investment in digital has really paid off. Now, if we think pre-digital or outside of digital, we can look at how to just use creativity and art to also redesign spaces around the social distancing needs that we have to support today. Here's a great example of Stella Artois and the Truman Brewery in London, creating a brand new guest experience designed to be something social, fun, and creative. And they've created different bubbles on the ground that people can congregate in to have those new experiences. This is about creating something which is also a great social story, as well as a great experience, and something that's highly shareable. Now, talking about community, a business that's literally below me right now in the same building is a small business that started in the midst of the pandemic when they couldn't even open their shop. They didn't plan it like that, but that's how it ended up being. And they created a community of more than 100 artists to sell locally produced products that have been created by this community. That community element in their business has been a driving force for success. And whilst they couldn't open their brand new shop, they started to think creatively about how to put everything online. And just in a few days, they put the entire business online in an incredible way, using off-the-shelf tools and website builders and sales platforms with very, very little technical knowledge. Now they're a thriving success, and they've really, really done something incredible, which is open up and have a very successful business in the height of lockdown. And they use things like Instagram stories to give their customers live tours of the products, as well as connecting with customers live through video chat to also show them and talk to them about the products. It's also about creating a very personalized experience. So if we think about creating experiences, these are the 4 things which you should keep in mind. How to find that right match with the brand, how to design and curate experiences that you can cluster under different themes, and how to respond to the needs of customers around those. How to communicate and promote experiences really effectively, be the behind the scenes storyteller, and continue to tell that story even if the experience isn't ready yet. Tell your customers what you're working on, and you'll be surprised how they respond to that. And then think about how you can package and distribute that and reimagine what packaging and distribution might look like. And that's where I'm going to focus in the next part of the presentation. How do we pivot, and how do we shift our offer to focus on the needs and the changing needs of our customers? Well, I looked to Singapore for inspiration here because, in fact, Singapore is a reference for us as a city and a country that has really responded very well to the pandemic by managing and handling the situation responsibly. And so we really salute you for the great work you've done there. I only wish we could do that here in the UK. Now, what we've seen is some brilliant examples of businesses which have to be agile. And Good Luck Beer House is just one of those great stories that actually has done so many little things, and they stand out as a business which has responded in the right way to the current situation. First of all, when lockdown came, they put all of their fresh tap beers on a click and collect basis, allowing people to have something which differentiated itself from traditional bottled beer by being able to get something straight from the tap to take away, and being able to just continue to be a strong business and a strong experience even when lockdown came. Then launching Beer for a Cause, where they partnered with different breweries to make sure the profits and the revenue from certain beers went to a local old age home that was very important to them in the community. This is about having a sense of purpose, and as I talked at the very beginning, having values that are rooted in the heart of your business. It's about actually caring about something and asking your customers to share in that passion that you have to support the local community. And it's about innovation and digital. Now, a lot of businesses are integrating today free tools to automate conversations with their customers. And this is one of those businesses which we really admire. They've integrated the Facebook Messenger app into their website, and it's something that anybody can do completely free of charge. And it's a great way to receive and respond to customers in the moment when they're making a decision, and to create a logic-based way of solving those regular questions that they have. A really great example. And it goes so much further. On their social media, they champion their customers. They tell the stories of triumph and success. And it's so much more about who they are as a business. It's about the community around them. If we think about how we respond to things, well, I used to love this very top of funnel branding where we create immersive content, stories, and experiences. But today, we also need to be very tactical and create a sense of push and pull with our customers. So I want to turn to a couple of examples. The Fairmont in Singapore has just been really great at adapting the packages and offers to say, well, the market's changed. We don't see the international visitors like we used to see, and creating these different ideas of what a staycation might look like, how to reutilize that space. From this concept of a mumcation, teaming up with brands and partners like Lush to create a package of different experiences, through to creating all sorts of other experiences around the business, where you can take the room for a day and have money to spend around the business. Also, we see great things like Furama are creating this Voucher Fest concept, a mini campaign to reactivate travel. If you look at what's happening in the market, you know that you need to maybe push people to revisit and re-experience. And that will continue to be a priority as different countries nearby start to open up. We need to continue to create these incentives. It's important to avoid a race to the bottom and use deals and price options as short-term stimulus rather than creating a lower price permanently, and to focus on the value that you can create. And by doing that, by focusing on the experience, you can create more value. Here's a great example of the same hotel brand that shifted to reuse the spaces in the hotel rooms to turn them into a co-working space, to reimagine the product they have, recognizing that the local market is their market today, and they need to think and respond as a startup, but also co-designing with their customers and learning what works, and realizing that as a hospitality business, the experience is the differentiator, and perhaps a stronger differentiator than a traditional office space. And so they came up with this great concept which plays on their strengths, such as work from hotel social, rebuilding some of those traditional elements of that guest experience into that co-working experience. Now, this is just such an inspirational story when I watched it, and I would highly invite you to go and have a look at this yourself in detail. But Lion Heartland is one of those companies which speaks about being hugely impacted, losing almost the entire business at the start of the first lockdown, but having to respond to that and identifying an entirely new market, testing new ideas such as creating tours, virtual tours, and seeing what they could do with them. And what they did is actually work with different schools to create remote tours. And now they're actually employing new people to run these remote tours for school groups, realizing that beyond traditional tourists, there are other people who will find this insights and these different things that we create in the hospitality industry really interesting, and seeing that there is more to just creating a tour than welcoming tourists. It's about creating an experience and about reimagining how to use technology to deliver that. Well, there's so many examples of businesses which have responded to the Singapore Rediscovers vouchers, and I think this is just such a great initiative. It allows businesses to pivot, to identify new customers, and to tap in to that stimulus that is being put out there to bring confidence back into travel. Well, we've seen so many different examples of this that I obviously can't show them all. But I think one of the ones that stood out to me was both Indie Singapore Tours and also Let's Go Tour, which they really responded by creating local tours which show a very different side to Singapore, and realize that it's not only about showing the traditional tourism angle of Singapore, but there is so much underneath the skin of the destination that even locals might want to discover. And you know what? By focusing on this, you'll also be responding to the needs of customers when they do return internationally in the future, because the trend globally is to experience places like a local. So if you design for the local market, your bread and butter, you'll certainly be more resilient for the future international market when it does return. Also, digital experiences are something that I think are incredible, and many businesses struggle at this point to create digital experiences. But what I want to say is, don't be afraid. We love design systems, and I just want to reference this Estonian design system because it creates a consistency where everybody can talk about the brand of Estonia in a very consistent and similar way. And we have seen a number of those tour operators also working with the Singapore brand in a similar way to have a consistency in how they talk about different segments such as collectors or foodies in a really consistent and powerful way. Design systems allow us to create that consistency and to follow a process whilst being creative and adapting to the needs of our users. This is an example of Visit California that recently relaunched their website in the middle of a pandemic again, and realized that they need to respond to the needs of their consumers. And so they focused a lot on content which answers common questions that their customers are asking online, and they focus a lot on how to respond to those questions through really brilliant articles. And they pick up the questions that their customers are asking, and they respond to those in articles. On a completely different example, Switzerland Tourism is using AI to remove assumptions about what they think people want and start to really personalize content recommendations based on how people behave and interact on their website. This is for those businesses that want to take digital innovation and automation to the next level. Look at how you can personalize that digital experience and serve up content, products, and experiences which respond to people's needs. The truth is that today there are many new problems to solve, and we can't solve them all. But we can start by focusing on those that are most prevalent for our customers. We love this company. It's called Mass, and they think Mass Global, and they think about mobility as a service. They see the way we travel in that multimodal world as a problem with a series of hurdles that needs to be connected. And this idea of seeing everything as a service, just as we saw with Singapore as a service, is a really great way of looking at the world. How can we create a sense of service to our customers? If we bring this down to a lower tech, but more of a creative version, we love what Lavazza Museum in Italy have created. They see social media as a service for their customers, and they've created a hybrid visitor experience where you can visit the museum, but instead of having your own personal audio device, perhaps you have concerns about hygiene, perhaps you just want to have your own device and keep yourself to yourself. You can experience the different audio walking tours around the museum through Instagram stories with your headphones and actually listen to them and see the artwork and the exhibits on your phone. It's a really creative example of using the tools that people are using every day and tapping into that. And it's very simple. As you have an example. I won't play that because things don't always work out so well from an audio point of view on webinars, but this gives you a little taste for it. Now, in Belgium, IBM have worked together with an AI company called Cantify and the National Rail Company to try and identify what problems have evolved out of the pandemic. And they've identified that there are very simple problems. Their customers have a concern over overcrowding on public transport. And so by working with those different problems and isolating them and starting to ideate and create solutions using design, they've been able to respond to each individual problem that their customer has along that customer journey and come up with innovative solutions. Here's an example of a solution that they came up with, which was to show people what level of capacity the train had and whether it was crowded or not, using different technologies that they combined together. Well, if you're a small business and you're thinking some of those examples are quite macro, quite large scale, I want to reassure you that there are just as many incredible examples that anybody can use off the shelf. Some of these here are apps which allow you to show real-time crowding, or a queuing app which allows you to show people to be able to allow people to queue if you're at full capacity because of your social distancing restrictions. It allows them to queue on their mobile and return later on. Or an app called Unity, which allows you to create a personal tour guide where everybody can connect with their own personal phones and listen to the guide explaining and speaking about the attractions and things as they walk around. It's a great example of how you can disperse a crowd using their mobile devices, but still be with them and create a tour guide experience, perhaps with even 50 people, which is something that we don't really imagine we can do right now. And then at table ordering, so many apps are now coming on the scene which allow you to help your customers have a contact-free experience by ordering at their table and replicating the things that people love about digital experiences in a physical environment. Going further, there are really big challenges in the world, and the United Nations have created the Sustainable Development Goals that some of you will be very familiar with. We've been looking a lot at research over this last few months, and what we can tell you is that consumers today are demanding and seeking to work with businesses that have a sense of responsibility and purpose when we think about sustainability. And some of the most successful businesses today have built a blueprint for their business around the needs of tomorrow to respond to those sustainable development goals, making those the center of their business. This is really an opportunity, just as digital was an opportunity a few years ago. Make sure that you adjust your offer to the new normal. Think about reassuring, retaining, and reinventing. That will require practical changes, that will require changes to the way you communicate, and it will require an open mind to what your business model might be in the future. Change how you communicate by thinking about how to show different hidden gems, how to create virtual experiences, but think differently about how to monetize those or what value they add to your business. Share the stories of the changes you're going through, which will be continuous as things change and open up. You'll be talking to different customer groups, welcoming some back, reassuring locals that you actually really love the new business you've discovered with them, and provide complete transparency through everything you do. Show people the challenges you're facing and be very honest, because your customers will really respond to that honesty. So as some key takeaways, and then I'm looking forward to taking your questions and also seeing the results of the poll. Think about how to adapt your product and consider the changing consumer behavior. Understand how to be more resilient as a business in a climate of uncertainty, and make sure you put out multiple revenue streams so that if one thing doesn't work out, you've got another one to fall back on. And use design and empathy to understand what your customers need and to create solutions for them. Not everything will work, but some of those really will, and that will be the success of your future business. Consider the immediate needs, but also the long-term shifts. Don't forget what's happening long-term. Think about things like sustainability as a priority, and don't forget how you're going to respond to your customers when they do return from the international markets. Really, really explore the opportunities to do great things in digital, and don't be afraid. There are so many off-the-shelf, affordable tools. Many are freemium models which start at zero, and then once you have a customer base using it, then they start to price up. And seek out opportunities to do things completely differently. It might not even be tourism, and don't be afraid of that. The more resilient and diversified we can be as an industry, the better that is for us. understand how the market's shifted and what the impact will be on seasonality. You might not have a traditional seasonal period anymore. You might be focusing on short-term tactical opportunities with your domestic and local market. And lastly, really use this opportunity to learn new tools, to find out how to do things differently, and to create a sense of experimentation within your business. This will get you a long way, and you shouldn't be afraid to do it. And on that note, I want to say thank you very much for your attention. I hope that's been useful, and I'm passing you back to the STB team.
Thank you, Nick. So lots to think about and lots to digest. We're just going to go to the poll. Interestingly, 67% of those of us on the call have not responded. So again, lots of time to ask questions as we go along. But Nick, if I could have your attention, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of our colleagues on the call have noted that diversification, pivoting or changing their business models really is going to be key to positive change while coming out of the pandemic. Your thoughts on the response to the poll? So again, quite interestingly, no surprises there. Firstly, diversifying. Secondly, digital innovation. Thirdly, connecting with the domestic market that's actually tied with appreciation for the work-life balance. That's great to hear. And finally, stronger focus on purpose and sustainability. Any surprises there, or your thoughts on, how other people are reacting to these questions?
Yeah, well, it's interesting to see, actually. I spoke at a conference in Latvia last week, and I thought it would be good to ask the same question to compare the results. And in Latvia, it was a very, very even spread across all of those. Whereas here we see a much, much stronger response to diversification and changes in the business model. I think that reflects the unique makeup of Singapore and the dependence on international travelers, which is normal and natural given the geographic context of Singapore. And I think what that really shows us is that the reliance on that international market has been a given, and there's no reason why it wouldn't be. But right now, that's meant a really, really radical shift to focus, for example, on the local market and to really reimagine what that business model is. I think, some of these changes that businesses will be making will be permanent. They will be permanent diversification. And whilst it may be challenging, because diversifying, for some, that means almost creating a new business, working like a startup, thinking about what ideas might work and just putting them out there and testing them. That's definitely a challenging process, for a lot of people to do. But those that have success in that will see something really different in the long term. They'll see that perhaps tourism, the visitor economy, is a part of their business, but perhaps online sales and distribution is actually a really interesting new part of their business, which they perhaps didn't really prioritize before. If you, for example, sell food, or you're a restaurant, you have produce, discovering that there is a market that actually wants to buy and order that online is something that could be really, really valuable. Or turning local customers into loyal repeat visitors is something that perhaps, if you focus on international visitors, was never really a priority. You had a regular flow of tourists coming through hotels, through OTAs and intermediaries. Why would you focus much on loyalty and brand? And now, well, things have changed a lot. You're talking to your nearest customers, which are on your doorstep, and there's an opportunity to build a relationship with them in a way that you perhaps couldn't really do so easily with an international visitor. We know that people like to visit different cities around the world, and you might visit Singapore one year and then visit another city the next year for your annual vacation or even one of your city breaks. Whereas now, if we think about the local market, they're on your doorstep. They can come back the following week and the week after that and the week after that. And that's a really great opportunity, because whilst they might spend less because the experience is different for them, that alone means they might not be ready to spend the same on seeing the attractions and sights of Singapore in that same way. They may be visitors that want to come back and again and again and again. And well, I didn't have time to cover all of the different examples, but we're seeing an increasing trend towards subscription models right now. Both subscription from an international travel perspective, where people are actually looking to subscribe, for example, a couple of $100s a month and have surprise visits dropped in their inbox. This is really something that the Gen Z market is actually very ready for. but also subscriptions at a local level, where you actually turn customers into subscribers and you focus on creating new experiences for them on a regular basis, or thinking about hybrid experiences, such as having a welcome in the premises, but also creating a learning series online. So to give you an example of what that might look like, if you're a restaurant that has really unique set of signature dishes or a really incredible way of, maybe even just making coffee or something very simple, you'll probably find that there is an audience out there that not only enjoys drinking that coffee or eating in your restaurant, but would love to know how you do it. And as people spend more time at home and online these days, there's an opportunity to speak to that audience and to say, well, if you subscribe, we will also show you how to do this and also welcome you into our business with a free meal or whatever that is on a monthly basis. This is a huge diversification for businesses that never even perhaps considered the online business opportunities aside from the business that intermediaries and booking sites brought into them. But it's such a great opportunity now. And you need a strong, unique and differentiated brand that your customers remember and that they actually feel some sort of connection or empathy with. And I think for many businesses, this is a new discovery. To create a brand, it means creating a direct connection with your customers and relying much, much less on third-party sites to bring your business in. So I think great opportunity, of course, a challenge to get that right as well.
Thanks, Nick. You speak about the opportunities and the challenges. We're seeing a lot of questions come through about the consumer expectations in the new normal, and also how you can actually create content that cuts through the clutter. So I think a lot of us, as we wait for international travel to resume or we want to create domestic demand, we've actually pivoted very quickly to digital content development. A lot of that, as you pointed out, sits at the top end of the funnel. So how do we move that closer to conversion while actually making sure that we really tap on the consumer insight?
Yeah, I think what's really important to consider is that we need to have a sort of dual strategy right now, which means we need to focus on the top of funnel, long-term brand building. So speaking to our international visitors, wherever they are in the world, and keeping that sense of who we are and that connection with them alive. Now, that may and may not bring revenue directly, immediately. You will learn and discover through creating content what people respond to. And it may take some time. But then you've got your local market at the same time, which is the other part of your dual strategy, which is much more ready to visit and to spend. And of course, in the right conditions, you can really welcome them in and create that great experience. But beyond everything is that opportunity to tell a story. And as the situation is changing constantly, we're all empowered with our mobile devices and social networks to tell our own story and to tell the story of our customers. And so I think the key tip for businesses is to look at where different stories exist and how to be genuinely, truly authentic in how to tell that story. When we think about online content and being a relevant voice for our customers, we can look at this in two different ways. Content should always be truly authentic, and it should tell a real story, because those stories which are real and come from a sense of passion really create engagement. Anybody who's just said, well, a real story online will see that those really genuine stories see 10 times the level of engagement as a kind of sales-focused message. But we also need to mix with that tactical, promotional messages, which are completely different to those, and have the right balance between the two. And realize that those tactical messages, those sales and promotion messages, should be fewer and further between from those real stories that we tell. And those stories might be, we're making these changes to our business, or we're going to experiment by creating an online series or a podcast series, and we want to know what you think, and seeing what customers respond to, how customers respond to that. Now, when it comes to the revenue opportunities of content, it's important to be realistic and to keep a sense of stay grounded when it comes to looking at opportunities. Don't rush to the revenue model straight away. Work with different content ideas, play with them, put them out there, and see which ones work. Some, regrettably, will have very, very poor engagement, maybe no real interaction or very low numbers. And that's absolutely fine. We've all had huge successes and failures when it comes to online. I don't think anybody here would disagree with that. Even the most seasoned marketers would tell you, well, we tried this concept and nobody really responded to that. That's okay. Experiment with different ideas. And when you do several different ideas, you will see that some of those really, really take off and people respond. And that's where you need to focus. Identify what works and do more of that. And that's something that we did here as well. We realized that by adding value to our customers, by allowing them to support their industry with free resources, was something that really, really created a response. And so this is now something we've maintained and kept in our thinking about how to give back at the same time as creating a kind of value-driven service. And that's only by doing and learning that you can see what's going to work and what isn't. But stay authentic and keep that content really genuine. And as I said, 2 points through the presentation, ask yourself what your passion is, what you're really good at. And if you're going to create content, why don't you think about showing others how to do some of what you're passionate about? Because people really want to learn from others that they admire. And you may well find that you're actually someone who can really share something incredible that people want to learn about.
Thanks, Nick. One of the a line of questioning that we're seeing come through is really about hybrid events. So again, what are some of the tips and tricks, if you will, and what are some of the pitfalls with regards to hybrid events, and how we then, transition and make sure they sit well together as we look at the new normal?
That's such a great question, and I think I'm quite well placed to answer that, actually, because we've been through this journey of events. Now, as a business, we had 3 strands of our business: advising others, like tourist boards and businesses, a membership model, and an event model. And of course, unsurprisingly, we had to cancel our 2 big events, which were hugely important for the business. I mean, we lost almost everything. And we had to rethink that process. And the first thing we realized is that the events are not going to just return. There isn't going to be, an end to the pandemic. This is a permanent shift in the market. And so when we went through that process, we started to completely reinvent the model of our events. We actually said our previous 2 events won't exist and they won't return ever again. It's very sad, but it's something we just felt was a reality. As even when things are safer and people are traveling again, the ambience and the atmosphere will be radically different. So that was the first thing, is to accept and recognize that, and then to start working with new ideas. So we did a lot of different content ideas, and some really worked and some didn't really work. And what we realized is when we create a sense of timeliness, such as putting a date and a concept out there for 6 weeks in advance, people really responded to that versus putting out something on an ad hoc or occasional basis. So the first learning for us was create a sense of momentum. Momentum is such a powerful thing, and I never hear it talked about in any marketing presentations anywhere, but momentum is so, so important. So you need to first of all think, well, if events are going to return and be successful, we need to get people excited about them. We need to be optimistic and positive and create something that really looks different to anything out there. I think as the events industry will very, very gradually start to return, we're going to see a lot of people rushing for the same business. And the way to be successful is to really rethink the whole event experience. Now, for us, that led to us coming up with a 5-day concept for an entire festival, which was way, way bigger than anything we'd ever done before. So it's really a case of lean in and double up. Now, most people are saying, well, why on earth would you do that when the whole industry is shrinking and people are finding themselves challenged in so many different ways? Surely you can't create something that's bigger than you ever did before. But for us, that mindset was we have to go out bigger, create something more exciting and richer. And we had 70 speakers. Lynette from Singapore was one of them. And we had 1,000 visitors watching. And more than 2,000 different connections happening at the same time. So this was a really, really huge success for us, and it was a gamble as well. Now, that was an entirely online event. We had to learn, test, experiment, work with new platforms, and really, really try and see if it worked. And of course, we're happy it did. Now, we talk a lot about the rest of the sector, the MICE industry, and we understand the hybrid event model is something which is starting to take traction. There are issues and challenges around profitability. Of course, it's a nice idea to have a venue that's maybe 20% full or 30% full and everyone else online, but you all know the numbers, that's not going to work. So this is where we need to really think outside the box, use those processes, design and innovation to completely reimagine the experience, to bundle and package an online experience together with a physical experience. If you're a venue, think about how you can create the most incredible visitor experience within the venue and also support the most incredible online experience. Because to answer your question that you asked at the beginning, we don't expect the events industry to return to normality for a long time. I think this is going to be the most challenging part of the sector to return. But that doesn't mean that we can't win or be successful with the opportunities. It means we need to be really, really smart and creative. So one of those opportunities is welcoming people in person, perhaps having a higher yield per customer because you create a much more premium experience, seeing that space more like a luxury dining experience where you charge more per person and you have a richer experience and you create an online experience at the same time. But also thinking about how the mechanics have changed. So, for example, we now turn to the idea of hosting all of our speakers in person next year, but keeping much of the event online and having those different scenarios and ideas set out. But I think one thing is important. Of course, we all want things to return to how they were before, but to also accept that whatever the change, and if we can increase capacity gradually, that's great. But the mindset has changed as well. And global businesses, especially, whether you think about companies like Microsoft or Facebook or pharmaceutical companies, they will also look at international travel differently. And they will be asking themselves, is this really necessary? Is this sustainable? Is this a necessary expense? As a lot of companies find themselves with more debt and having to work harder to rebuild. And so as people ask these questions, we need to be able to respond to them and say, yes, this is really worth traveling for. This is value for money. We've created a much, much more premium experience so we can welcome fewer people but create a better experience, and we can support that online experience too. So there's a whole redesign that needs to happen. And we should start working on that now and start experimenting with our closest partners, those events that always used to come to that hotel or that venue. Start co-designing with them. Ask them if they will be part of a process where you design together a new solution. And that's where you maybe wouldn't have been so transparent with customers before to say, we don't quite know where we're going, but we want to work with you to see what we could design as a concept. If you work with those events which have always been successful, you'll find that you'll be designing it around the needs of them, your customers, and their customers, which are their attendees. And you will surely find the right way forward by doing that.
Thank you, Nick. I know that you at the DTTT have been moving 1 million miles a minute, but we do have a couple of questions from the floor, and I'm going to summarize that as our last question. Number one, there are people who are new to digital marketing. Number two, there are people who are also struggling to keep up with design thinking and all the latest and greatest marketing tools. What would your advice be as to how they can keep up, not lose out, and still make sure that their programming is effective?
Yeah, I think first of all, and it's very easy to say this, but it's really, really important to monitor and stay on top of trends. See what others are doing, really take time to reflect on them and learn from that. Try to always put yourself in the position of a user or a customer. Try to look at everything, the world around you, as a customer, and you should be able to see that actually this is really an interesting experience, or I really love their website. I love how they do this, or I love how they talk to me through the email marketing. It really catches my attention. So just think of yourself as a user, first of all. The biggest mistake we often do is look at things as a business through our lens and not through the lens of our customers. And also, even people who work with technology, they often don't do a great job because techies, programmers, developers, they often look at code and how to build, and they don't look at the user experience. So that user experience, that goes back to the topic of the webinar, is about the lens and the eyes of the customer and how that experience looks like for the user. People who are very great at digital are often the worst people when it comes to online experiences. They can build something amazing but useless or not a great experience to use. And businesses often have a much better view of what's a great experience, but they struggle to find out how to do that. And that's where you need to apply curiosity. Dig into things, look further. When you see something great on a website, look all over that website for the integrations that they used. Most often, you'll actually find it right in front of you. For example, we use a chat on our website called Intercom. Well, when we first saw Intercom 5 years ago or something like that, we thought, wow, this is such an incredible user experience to talk to our customers. And we just looked all over it, and actually we saw Intercom provided by Intercom. That curiosity led us to look at Intercom. Then that led us to look at how to integrate it. And that part was surprisingly simple. It's the same with websites. Often you'll see an incredible website that you really love. Scroll to the bottom, and probably 5 times out of 10, you will find that it's actually built with a tool which you can get off the shelf, which is probably very, very affordable, if not starting at free. And you can build that yourself. There are also so many great resources. There's things like Google Garage, which will teach you some of the really key principles of marketing and how to organize your digital marketing activities in a strategic way. Of course, Singapore Tourist Board also create great resources and material for you to work with as well. And the other thing you can do is ask your competitors, ask your partners, what are you working with? What tools are you using? And see if they'll take some time out to show you that as well. Now, one of the really huge opportunities is automation. I don't want to kind of rush ahead at a million miles an hour, but automation is such a great opportunity, especially if you want to be smart with digital. And many of you will be using email software like MailChimp to create newsletters for your customers. More and more, all of these tools are adding automation tools, so they will respond to customer behavior. For example, if I click on this product in the email, should I then send them a second email a week later to ask if they're still interested in that product? These are tools that we can grasp and use ourselves, and more often than not, it's not a technological thinking that's required. It's a curiosity and a willingness to invest the time, and for most of us, that might be our spare time, to looking into how I can leverage or use that, and watching tutorial videos that all of these different platforms provide. From web builder tools like Shopify, which will allow you to sell online and create an online store with just a few clicks, to even things like MailChimp, which also allow you to build incredible websites and automate your customer communications, through to tools like Webflow or Wix or Squarespace, which allow you to build websites, right through to chatbots like Facebook Messenger's integration. All of those that I mentioned are easy to use, that you follow through a rather seamless online experience and you build it out. But to do it successfully, you need to know what you want to achieve, what images and content is going to make that really stand out, and what experience you want to create. So you do need to plan, you need to have a strategy in mind, and you need to be able to map that out. But I would say test, experiment, and work with these different tools and see what really stands out to you. And don't be afraid, because almost everything, and it's also the case for us, everything you work with is generally going to be non-technical, because so many solutions are created for just everyday businesses that don't want to spend their time with technology. So just take the time to look into what's out there and see what you can do.
Thanks so much, Nick. Any last thoughts before you leave us?
Well, I think, to keep an open mind, we can't have a rigid strategy like we used to. Anybody who started a business will know that, whether you went to the bank or whether you had a business advisor at the beginning, you had to create a business plan, present it, and really show what you were going to do and how your revenue would look like over 3 years. Now, we would all love to do that and love to be sure of that, but we need to realize that the whole world is changing. And even if Singapore is so far ahead of other countries, if you depend on those other countries, you need to be aware of their realities and their challenges too. Keep that business model fluid and open, and be ready to have different streams within that. Be ready to work with ideas or explore ideas. Take the time to iterate and optimize those ideas. They might fail and they might succeed. And you only need one or two brilliant ideas to succeed, to transform your whole business. So the resilience is not only a question of resilience within your business, it's a resilience within yourself and a determination to keep working, to keep trying, and to eventually get there to something which actually probably looks really, really different to what you were doing before the pandemic. It might be a slight shift. I think for most people, it won't be a complete overhaul of their business. It might be just a step to the left or a step to the right. But really work at it and have that determination, which every entrepreneur has in them, to get to something brilliant, because it will come if you keep working in it and you put your passion and what you're really brilliant at in the heart of everything you do.
Thank you so much. So words of wisdom from Nicholas Hall from the DTTT, and really telling us how to chart growth with consumer centricity as we look at the new normal, and even as Singapore moves into phase 3. Thank you everyone for joining us. Nick, we look forward to welcoming you back to Singapore. Fingers crossed very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, the masterclass will also be available on the Marketing College website. The QR code on the screen that you see will also enable you to share your feedback with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take care and have a wonderful end of year holiday, and we look forward to connecting up with you in 2021. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.